All right. Looks like we're live.
Cool.
All right, cool. Awesome, man. Well, welcome everybody. We'll wait to get some people on board, start watching us here. We're back again with another version of our Renovation Roundtable. Myself, Jeff Onofrio, and Matt Porcaro.
Yo.
What's up, Matt?
What's going on?
Not much, man. Not much. Just, I know we said we were originally going to try to do this every week, and then we realized how insanity that really was to think it was going to happen every week.
Yeah, well, as we were just talking about before, market's hot right now. You're obviously very busy, and it's good. And we could talk a little bit more today about what to do in this crazy world we're still living in right now, and how it's affecting real estate markets in different areas. But we're just welcoming anybody's questions as they come on. I know a lot of people said they were attending. A lot of people are coming on board. So plus there was a couple of questions that were rolling in prior to getting started. So what do you want to do? We'll roll right into it, or start answering some questions that were coming up in the Facebook group?
Well, give me 1 second here real quick, because it's saying we're having trouble. Well, it looks like to the 203K way page, it's we're having some problems streaming to there. So give me 1 second here. Let's see. We can figure out what we got going on here. Edit it. Let's see. It doesn't allow it starting early is fine. Okay. Well, we didn't start. We weren't 10 minutes late. We were only 2 minutes late. So let's see what we got. How do we figure this out? All right. So I apologize to everybody. Let's try to remove it, and then we'll redo it again.
Sure.
Remove. So I apologize for everybody. We're gonna add this back in right now. Let's see if that worked. Okay. All right. I think we're good again. So sorry about that, guys. We'll give this a second go. Welcome again to the Renovation Roundtable. This is our second episode. And I'm Jeff Onofrio, and
I'm Matt Porcaro. We're doing it again. Nice, smoother transition this time. Yeah, guys. No, we're super excited. I think Garrett said he's here, only trying to get through in the email. Samantha said, Garrett. As some of you guys that are in my group, we're gonna bring Garrett on here today. Just trying to get everyone on board. Technology is always a challenge, but we're learning that with COVID that we got to do it. So we have a lot of questions that are coming up. Hopefully we can answer more today. As we were saying before we went live, we want to make sure that we touch on some of the questions too about what the environment's doing right now, and how still living in the COVID world, and what we're seeing in the markets right now, and what you can do to kind of leverage yourself right now.
Absolutely. Well, listen, guys, please remember this is streaming in multiple spaces right now. We have it on Facebook on both Matt and I's pages. We also have it up on YouTube, and we're out on Periscope. So if you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat box. We'll be happy to answer them as we go along. That we encourage the questions. That's really what this is. This is really an opportunity for you guys to have a live opportunity to talk to someone who's done a 203K from Matt's perspective, who also teaches about the 203K, myself as a lender. And then Garrett is a wealth of knowledge, being a HUD consultant. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this was to bring that different, piece of knowledge to you and allow you to ask those questions directly. So without further ado, we'll bring Garrett in. And please, like I said, shoot us messages on here, and we will we'll answer them live here on the event. We got about an hour booked off. So as long as we got questions, we will continue to rock and roll with this. So. All right, let's add him in here. Garrett, how are you, sir?
Morning, guys.
Hey, Garrett, how are you doing?
Not too bad for an old guy.
Yeah, everything's crazy. Ben, we were just talking before about how, what we're seeing in our market. I don't know if you're seeing it down there, but up here in New York, it's, pure insanity with the level of competition that's happening right now. It's actually a little different than what we were expecting. People were expecting things to maybe collapse around us, but we're seeing quite the opposite. I don't know if you're seeing the same thing.
Yeah, there's been quite a bit of pent up activity where people weren't going out and looking at places, and now all of a sudden they're getting tired of looking at the house they're in, And they want to venture out, or they want to do refis because now they're tired of looking at that ugly kitchen.
Oh,
So
yeah.
in Atlanta here, we're seeing a lot of pent up activity.
Yeah, I think that's happening everywhere right now. I think you got pent up activity, and then you also have the perfect storm of not enough inventory. So another reason why the 203K can be such a great tool is that maybe the houses you're looking at aren't the most perfect place, but one of the reasons why you can buy it and then renovate it all in the same loan. So that's kind of the idea behind this, even in this market. And then just so people know, 203Ks are getting done. We're doing them every day. I know you guys are seeing people in the group that are doing them every day, and I know I'm seeing them personally every day. So, how about you, Garrett? Where is there any hotbeds around the country in particular that you're seeing right now?
Not specifically. I do know that Florida is rocking and rolling down there. I know Atlanta here. I'm up probably 30% in the last 3 months.
Wow.
And that, which is like crazy. I'm just one guy. But what people guys, what people don't understand is that, when we don't have a lot of new construction going on in the country anymore. So the lenders don't have a business out there. Then the rates have been so low for such a long time that everybody that was going to refi has already done so. So, now we're getting to the point where we don't have enough inventory to sell to people. So people are looking at these rehabs and settling on that not so perfect house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. Garrett, a lot of people we've been dealing with it, and we see it in the groups, and we answer the questions. When what's your first? What would you recommend as a HUD consultant? What is the first thing you should do when considering a 203K? What do you see from your perspective?
Well, I always teach my people to go into the deal backwards. I always want to know what's the top end of this neighborhood. How much, even if this place was absolutely gorgeous, what's the top end of this area? And then work backwards from there. So sometimes when I'm dealing with investors, I'll teach them to say, okay, if the top end of the neighborhood is 150,000 and you need 50,000 to get there, then you can afford to pay 100.
Right.
But as an investor, you really want to make your margin, so you really can't offer any more than 80,000 for this place. Mm-hmm. So I teach my people to work backwards.
Okay, unless you're going to be considering doing a buy and hold, and your reasoning is to hold that property long term. I mean, that could work theoretically.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's a different thought process.
Yep. Cool. Very nice. Okay. What are you guys doing, and what are the consultants doing when it comes to the COVID environment? When it comes to actually doing inspections, are they actually going into what do they do? Are they doing the normal inspection process? Is there something different? What are they doing to protect themselves and to protect the people? What kind of thoughts can you give us there?
Well, I can tell you, me as an individual, a mask, gloves. And what I do is I ask them people to walk through the property with me one time so I can get a feel for what their desires are. Then I tell them to all go home. Go ahead, get out of my way, leave me alone.
Yeah.
And then I do my floor plan drawings, and then I do my photographs and my notes and stuff like that, but in the beginning you have to deal with the people, and you just try to distance, stay away, don't breathe on me.
Good point. Good point.
But yeah, we're still doing the same procedures that we would normally, and that just amended a little bit.
Okay, cool. So talk to us about what you do when you do an inspection. You do we know it's all called the SOR, the spec of repairs, specification of repairs. Walk us through it. What do you do? What's the process? What are you looking for so that a prospective buyer can understand what the HUD consultant brings to the transaction in helping them to navigate through for most people, their first 203K?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is do a feasibility study. And a feasibility study is a process meant to answer the question, is it feasible to do this? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them what they paid for the house. So they'll tell me 100,000. I'm like, okay, great. Then I'll look at the realtor and ask the realtor, okay, what's the top end of this neighborhood? So the realtor will say 150. So it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that if I'm buying it for 100 and it's worth 150, I got a $50,000 budget, right?
Right.
Third question I'm going to ask to the buyer is, how much have you been pre-qualified for? They may tell me 135. Then I know that becomes my limiting factor because of their ability to finance. They can't afford any more than $35,000 in rehab. So in the first 15 minutes, I'm going to walk this property and I'm going to start jamming numbers out in my head going, okay, I come back to the kitchen and tell them, look, guys, if you got a $35,000 budget, I'm seeing 50, 60,000 worth of mandatory things here. This is just not going to fly for you. So let's all shake hands, kill the deal, and get on to the next one.
Right.
The other scenarios, I may come back and say, look, I'm seeing about 20,000 or so in mandatory things, which gives you a window of about 15,000 for desires or upgrades, things like that. And then we determine what upgrades, they want to go with and see if we can squeeze it all in for 20,000 or less.
So I have a question about that. So a big question I always get all the time, right? And we've spoken about this before, but a lot of people ask, well, what if I'm looking at a property again, if some people are looking to build some equity on these deals, they're saying, well, I'm looking at this property, but I'm really not confident in what I think it's going to cost to do this renovation. What do you tell people that maybe they have one or two properties in the pipeline, but are a little hesitant on making an offer because they just don't really know what it's going to cost? They don't know feasibly what it's going to cost. Should they make the offer first and then wait to bring in the consultant and then squash the deal if it doesn't work? Or is it ever advisable to get a 203K consultant in there ahead of time, pay them their fee, whatever they charge to maybe do the feasibility study, and then just do it ahead of the game?
Well, that's always the best idea, to go in with a consultant or a contractor or somebody that's construction literate, to be able to go through there and say, look, guys, this is about what it's going to be, and give them some kind of a planning number.
Right.
People don't understand. I mean, they think they can do $20,000 worth of work with 4,000, and it never works.
It's true. Hey, I got one for you, Garrett, and this is always a sticking point for some people. Is it contractor first or is it consultant first? In your opinion, I have my opinion. I'll give you my opinion in a bit, but your opinion, who comes first?
Absolutely, consultant first. The day after the sales contract is signed, because you have that due diligence period. If you get the contractor in there first, you're losing about 2 weeks. Right. Because when you get the contractor in there, the contractor doesn't know what FHA minimum property standards are.
Correct.
So they're going to forget a lot of things. So they're going to, or not forget, but they're not going to know a lot of things.
They're going to miss them.
So what happens then is all of a sudden the consultant comes in a week later and he starts adding those things, being, health and safety, code violations, things like this. And then all of a sudden the contractor's got to go back and rewrite his bid, putting in all the things that the consultant identified. So to save that time frame, it's always best to get the consultant in the door first.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I know there are some people out there that want to get that contractor out there first because they want to save money, but they don't realize what they're doing is they're really losing time and money, because that's the wrong way to do it. And you are right. And that's one of the reasons you get so much back and forth when it comes to paperwork is that you put the position, people going first, or the wrong people going first. You got to get the consultant out there first. It has to be the case. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I just want to make sure you thought the same way, because there are some people out there even on the consultant side that actually won't go out unless the contractor's been there. And I've actually had to fight against that from a lender perspective. And I refuse to do that because it's the wrong way to do the business.
Now, Jeff, you're in the construction business too. And just to chime in, you're in the construction business. My dad's a general contractor, however, 30, 40, a bajillion years now. I still am against having a contractor go in first. Like, should be represent, because I know the contractors that are out there. I've been in the business. I know what it is. You don't want to give them the creative freedom to go in and just it's so much better. I mean, when Garrett told me about like creating the scope of work now I did it the opposite, right? Now, do as I say, not as I did. I did it the wrong way. Okay. I had my contractor in there first, and then my consultant came in and tried to fit a square peg into a round hole. Once Garrett told me the very logical solution of having the HUD consultant go in first, because the HUD consultant's the one that's going to tell the bank you could do it or not do it, not the contractor. So, having that consultant in there first, number one, is going to give you the opportunity to kind of get more of like a little bit of an objective look. And then, secondarily, you get a scope of work now you could shop out and have a level bidding process with all the different contractors that you have out there.
Yeah. Well, in the FHA manual today is something I wrote back in 1992. And I can quote it to you because I wrote it. It's the responsibility of the consultant to provide an unbiased cost estimate without the use of a contractor.
Yep.
That's in the manual today, without the use of a contractor. So Jeff's 100% right. You get these consultants saying, "Hey, I won't go out until I see the contractor's bid,"
because they're not qualified. Then
I'd run like hell. That guy.
They're not doing their job the right way. I mean, you want them to do it the right way. I mean, I don't know about you, Garrett, but a lot of the consultants that I work with will do an SOR, which is their spec of repairs. And again, I'm going to generalize this for the people that are watching us on the different forums right now. The SOR is the document. You can actually give us a breakdown on what that is in a second, Garrett. But then a lot of the consultants I work with will also give us a BOR, being bid on repairs. So can you tell us about the two differences so that we can talk about that so people can understand what they should be getting?
Well, the specification of repairs is my estimate based on what I believe the average contractor would charge to do that degree of work.
Right.
So that's my estimate. And that's what the mortgage companies finance off, is that document. Now, included in my package that I send out an absolute duplicate of that document, but it doesn't print the dollars.
Right.
It's called a bid on repairs report. Now, I advocate all my customers to use that document, give it to 2, 3, 4 different contractors, have them bid on that form, because this way they can be assured that all the bids come back are going to be apples to apples, and they're going to get those bids back a lot faster, because contractors are notorious for not putting things in writing. It takes them forever to get it done. They're out swinging a hammer all day long. Then they got to go home and write 5 bids. Okay. So I've already done all that typing and all that writing. So all I have to do is pencil in their numbers, sign it, send it back.
Right.
And
kind of a dream for a contractor, because there's I work in construction in Manhattan, right? This is literally how you do large scale construction. It has to be done this way. GCs shop out their bids and they have a leveling sheet, right? We know, but what's funny is leveling sheets are not a consistent thing in like retail, markets, like just regular homeowner home improvement markets. Usually the contractor writes you a number on a napkin, or a pretty roughly, a pretty like rough sketch of what am I talking about? Just like an estimate on a sheet of paper, and it's not anything. They say renovation, $100,000, and they don't level it out. So what you're doing, Garrett, and what a lot of HUD consultants should be doing, and one of the things that you should be looking for, anyone that's watching, from your HUD consultant, is that delineated thing, because it's also going to make sure that you're not missing. The more detailed, the better on that, because that makes sure that you're not missing anything in translation. I mean, how many times I've heard stories of people that, maybe not even with the 203K, but just people that are working with contractors, for their own projects, is, they said something verbally. Oh yeah, I want a nook in my shower, but they're like, they didn't interpret it as a nook, or maybe the guy, told his team, or didn't tell the guys that are actually there doing the work, that there was supposed to be a nook in the shower. Little details like that are things that could be covered
in my bid, so it's going to cost extra.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and honestly, the other reason for that too, for the rest of everybody who's watching this, the SOR is the document that goes into the appraisal to determine the after improved value. It's not the contractor bid. By HUD definition, you theoretically could close a 203K without a contractor, because as long as you have the SOR in the actual appraisal, you actually know what the collateral is going to be. So not that we're ever really going to do that, but I'm just trying to explain like the fact that it can be done, and that's by the letter of the law. Now the other side of that too is that the reason why we use the SOR in there, and Garrett, I'm sure you can probably give us many stories on this, is going to be the fact that as a project goes sideways, let's be honest, let's call it what it is. There are projects that do not go the way they're supposed to go. But if the SOR is the document, the mandate that we're working off of, theoretically, you can bring in any contractor and they work off of what you've created, Garrett, or any other HUD consultant to finish the project, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what would you, I mean, how many times has that happened in your career? I can only imagine. I maybe have to do an over under on this one, and maybe I'll bet.
Well, the specs that a consultant should write are all based on how many square feet of this, how many lineal feet of that, how many square yards. You know, it should be all broken down in great detail like that. Now, I have a program that I use that I bought in 1995 for $59. I still use today. But it's a floor plan drawing program. If I draw the floor plan program out, it gives me a full-blown material list.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, there's 8,206 square feet of drywall going in here. That's what it is.
Right.
And there's 8,206 square feet of paint you got to go in. But I mean, it breaks it down. So I'm not going in there, you know, lump summing everything and just guesstimating at those numbers. We try to do this as scientifically as we can. So, and then, you know, and then the contractors looking at the bids, they know what their prices are. They know what a guy's going to charge, their subs are going to charge them for carpet. So they can just pencil in the numbers and send it through.
Their subs give them, I mean, my subs all the time, they give me prices based on square footage or lineal feet, or I mean, that's what they have. If you're not working off those numbers, I mean, of course there's some like, you know, special cases or whatever, but and that's great. And what's so great about this conversation, what Garrett is saying is the resounding theme here is that, guys, you don't need a common misconception is people go into this thinking you need like this, you know, huge background in construction and renovation. No, the people that you get on your team, if you pick the right people like Garrett, people, HUD consultants that know what they're doing, know actually how this thing's supposed to be done, will help you through the process. We're not expecting people to understand that. That's why you're hiring a contractor and paying these people to do it for you, is to help you. And I always go back to it saying that 203K is like flipping a house with training wheels on, because you're doing a flip, but you have some people that are kind of helping you along the process.
Well, yeah. I'd like to just put this out there too, that the consultant works for the buyer on the front side of the property, on the deal. Okay, so my fiduciary responsibilities are to them, and I'm there to make sure that they're getting everything that they need. So it behooves you to bring a consultant in first to set the whole program up. And you know, and then too, on the backside, after the loan is closed and the consultant goes out and does the draws for the contractors, the payments. Now, in my specs, I have something in the heating and air conditioning section that says furnace unit to be a train or a ream or something like that, or equal. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a furnace out there called a Goodman. It's a piece of crap.
I got two in my house, Garrett. Thanks to my builder, by the way.
And they don't last long at all. So we're paying this guy for a high-end product,
right? And
these contractors go in and put shit in there.
Yeah.
So when I go out, I tell them, look, take it out. That's not what these specs say. These specs say put in a ream or equal, and then the Goodman is not equal. So we protect these people, and we also protect the lenders and FHA to make sure things don't get sideways, you know.
Yeah, and when they do, that's kind of what I was alluding to with the whole fact of having the SOR and having that as the main doctorate of the transaction, because I don't want everybody to think it's all rainbows and unicorns when it comes to doing these deals. Things do go sideways sometimes, and that's the whole reason that back to Matt's point about having a team that understands what's going on to try to alleviate as many of those possibilities as there are. But it does happen, and somebody on Facebook said it happened to me. So
yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, and it happens, and we're not taking it away from the fact that it does happen. But again, it all comes back down to the team that you have built, guys that are experienced like Garrett, like Jeff, or anyone that and you can verify. Hey, these guys know what they're doing. This isn't their first rodeo. Not like me, where I dealt with where it was everyone's first rodeo, and that's why we do these things, is to try to help people not experience some of the issues that I had. But there will be issues, and that's fine. But again, your team's there to help you get past them and fix what you need to. That SOR, again, so extremely important to have it as detailed and as clear as possible, because they're always you'll have that. You can't argue it's in black and white, right? So
minimize.
The consultant is the only boots on the ground.
Yeah.
That's the only face these borrowers ever see. So we wind up playing grandma because we got to cover everything to help these people understand the ramifications of the decisions that they make, and we help them make educated decisions.
Right.
Absolutely. So Garrett, talk to me a little bit about the limited 203K. I know obviously the limited does not require a HUD consultant. What can a potential buyer do from your perspective? And I'm sure I actually probably know what the first answer you're going to say is, but assuming that they're not going to get a HUD consultant, because I would recommend that they do anyway. I always have agreed with that. But assuming that they, you can't, I as the lender can't beat it through their head that they should have a consultant on a limited, no matter what I say. They just want to save that $400 or whatever it is. They'd rather not have somebody come out. What kind of advice would you give that person as to how to successfully navigate a limited, even though there's not a consultant on the project? I know it's a tough question, so I apologize.
No, in that scenario, I would hire a home inspector to go through first.
Okay.
I would give the contractor the home inspector's bid and say, hey, address all these things. Okay. Now, originally, when they used to call it the Streamline FHA 203K, but originally, that was designed as a patch and paint program.
Right.
And they capped it out at $15,000. Now, over the years, some bright stars at FHA decided that they were going to kick that up to $35,000.
Mm-hmm.
That $35,000 is not a patch and paint job anymore.
No, yeah, it always blows me away that's the limit. Yeah.
All this other stuff with no supervision. Yep. Now, the other bad thing, and I'm sorry, Jeff, I got to do this.
It's all right. Hey.
The bad thing about the limited is that they give the contractor up to 50% of the money up front.
Right.
But he doesn't get another nickel until the job is 100% completed.
Yeah.
Now, just common sense tells me that how can I expect somebody to do 100% of the job with 50% of the money?
Sure.
Doesn't work in my world. So I'm not a big fan of the limited. But if you want to protect yourself, the best way to do it is get yourself a home inspection in there first. Then give that home inspection to the contractor. Let the contractor bid on the summary pages of everything that the home inspector is identifying. And you'll wind up with a decent house at the end of the day.
Yeah. I opened the door, Garrett, so you were welcome to step right. Yeah.
A lot of people have my opinions,
and I value them, as does Matt, and I think that's important. And I think I want people to hear it, because a lot of people just hear limited, streamline, and they hear easy and 35,000, and it's like, no, dude, I don't know who told you that it makes it easy. It's not any easier. And you also, like you said, there's no supervision. Like if you're a first time home buyer and you don't have supervision, it's kind of backwards. It almost should be the other way. You have to know what you're doing. So,
and Jeff, go ahead, Garrett.
When the contractor runs out of money,
yeah,
it puts these people, the homeowners, in such a terrible position, because now they have to find another contractor that's willing to come in, finish the job, not even be able to bid it,
Mm-hmm.
but finish for what money is left available and not get paid until he's 100% done.
Yeah.
Where is the impetus for a contractor to want to get involved in a project like that?
I just had one of my followers contacted me on Instagram, DM'd me, said, "Hey, I don't know who else to go to. I was using a 203K limited, started back in December. The contractor came in, did the demo, left, haven't heard from him since."
Wow.
And got his 50%. And I said, and they're like, well, what do I do? I'm like, well, like, how'd you find this like, I had a lot of questions just first, like, how did you get to this point where like you got this contractor? She was like, well, it's the only contractor that I had. And I was in a press for time, and they were the only people that I could find. And, you know, he was willing to take the job, blah, blah, blah. And this guy got his 50% up front, took it and ran. What was even worse, and I think I told you this, Jeff, was like, this is a lender that I won't name names, but this is a lender that claims they do 203K loans all the time. And she said that she went to the original, I mean, I guess the renovation, what do you call the person that actually not writes the loan, but they kind of oversee it as it goes?
Administrator.
Yeah. So they went to them and they said, what do I do? And they said, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Give them no answer. I'm like, well, they can get another contract. You have to get another contractor to finish the work.
Yeah.
But they're not giving her any gun. And I felt terrible. But yeah, I mean, again, another issue of like, she kind of rushed it, and there was a lot of things that she didn't do up front, and it's sad, but a lot of those things really could have been mitigated if she did kind of what Garrett did, got an inspector in there, really got a real look on what needed to be done to the property, and then maybe managed it, you know, just a little better from the front end. But yeah, no, scary. But you know, again, this can all be mitigated if you have the right people in place.
Well, that brings me to something I wanted to bring up for you, Garrett. One of my realtors that I work with, Janice, actually asked us a question here, and I think it's a great one. Janice asked, hi, Janice, by the way. Does the consultant stay with the buyer until the home is reconstructed?
Yes, the consultant is in the job from conception through completion.
Perfect. And when you say completion, let's define that for people. That means the work is just done, or what is defined as completion?
The final draw.
Okay.
When the construction is completed.
And that'll include, for others out there too, that also includes the sign off of any permits that are required for the town, correct?
Right. Yeah, I'm going to make sure that before I do my final paperwork, I'm going to make sure that there's a certificate of occupancy and that all the city or county and building inspections have been performed already before I sign off.
Perfect. And then you send your information over to the draw administrator for the lender, and then the lender will cut the final checks. And for anybody who's watching there too, throughout the draw process, as Garrett is coming out and inspecting the property, as he does the draws, whatever his number is, we take 10% off the top, and we hold that as a holdback. And once Garrett does his final draw, his final, and he sends that into us, then we release the 10% holdback along with the final draw. I think that's important for people to understand as well.
And that's very common in construction.
Right.
You know this, Jeff.
Yep.
In professional construction, 10% holdback is absolutely normal. And if anyone has an issue with that, that's, you know, it's a red flag. Which brings me to another great question. I know we can't really see the name. I'm sorry of who it is, but great question here. It comes up all the time. I noticed that not a lot of contractors would do the 203K loan because they have to put their money down first up front. What is the advantage for the contractors to work under the 203K loan? Excellent question. And this is a good foray into that question. So I'm sure we all have our own ways to talk about kind of how to mitigate or how to talk about this whole situation, because it comes up a lot. People think, oh, I'm not getting a deposit, right? They think of that. That's like a classical way. So Garrett, let's start with you. What would you say to someone that is seeing that they might have that issue finding a contractor to do the work?
Well, what I do is I talk to the contractors and tell them, look, guys, your money is guaranteed.
Right.
It's all there. I'm the guy you got to satisfy. So if you want it, as soon as you want to get reimbursed, you call me, I'll come out, I'll do a draw, I'll authorize the release of the funds, and we'll keep rolling your money over. And I have a little cliche that I use. I tell them, look, I don't want you guys eating cornflakes for dinner. Don't stretch yourselves out so far that you have to stop the job until you get another paycheck. And that you just call me anytime you want to get paid, because the draws are done based on a percentage of completion. So if they're 10% done with the plumbing, give them 10% of that money. 50% of the roof, they get 50% of that money. So, a lot of times I try to explain to people too that, a lot of contractors out there want a third down. Okay. So a third down on a $30,000 job is $10,000. You got to give this guy 10 grand on a Friday night and just hope the hell he shows up on Monday.
Yep.
That's pretty scary, Yeah. But a lot of your shyster contractor guys are not good businessmen. They may be good tradesmen, but they're not good businessmen. And do you really want to deal with somebody that's not a good businessman? Stealing money from one job to finish another job and back and forth.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul. And that's construction, guys. That's like, sorry to interrupt you, Garrett, but admittedly, my dad did that. When times are tough, he used deposits to pay another job. And unfortunately, that's the reality of it. And to that being said, my dad is an excellent tradesman, and he's admittedly not the best business person, and it shows. The guys you're looking for are not ones that are doing that. You want the teams that have a bunch of crews, they have a bond, they have credit. Again, guys, this is in, I always go back to big construction. Look at what the big construction guys are doing. Jeff, you know this. When you start a big multi-million-dollar project, you need to be bonded. You're not getting paid until maybe 2 months into the project. You're not getting squat. You don't get deposit. You're lucky you got the job. You're not getting a deposit. So the right contractors will be okay with this. And as Garrett said, the money is guaranteed, which you can kind of think of it in reverse. People might give you a deposit. But again, what's happened to my dad is people give you the deposit, you start the work, but they don't have the rest of the money. They had enough to get going. They thought that they would get a bonus from their job. They didn't get the bonus. And then my dad's, 50 grand into the job and he only got 25 and they don't have any other 25. So it's another way to look at it, right?
One of the things I always say, and no disrespect to anybody who's watching this, because if I offend you, it wasn't done intentionally. I always kind of tell clients that the contractor you're looking for is not the guy driving an F-150 with his tools in the back and doing the work himself. What you're really looking for is you're looking for the professional contractor who has a crew, who he is really the businessman who does the paperwork, and he goes from job to job and he's managing it. It's why a design build firm is really built better for most of these bigger projects, because they're meant to be managers. They're not meant to be hands-on. And again, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of guys out there that can actually physically do the work and physically do the paperwork and do the tradesman work themselves, but the majority are not. That's just the nature of the beast, and it's not meant to be disrespectful. It's just meant to be honest. So I want to make sure we explain that, because that's how I talk. I mean, that's exactly how I tell clients all the time. And some of the guys that are really good at fitting in this mold are going to be the people that are going to be the contractors that work on insurance jobs, right? Because to your point, Matt, guys who work on insurance jobs, no, they don't get paid until it's done. I mean, that's just, but the same thing is, it's just like with us, the money is guaranteed. It's there. You as the contractor don't have to worry if the client really has the second half of that money in his bank account when he's finished and doing it on deposits. The lender is holding that money, same as a contractor is working with an insurance company. They know the insurance company is going to pay.
And it's an escrow. Garrett or any HUD consultant is the one that's really releasing it. I mean, I can't tell you also how many times my dad got into pissing matches with a client, and the door hardware wasn't in, but they were holding back 15 grand. Yep. You know what I mean? Whereas with Garrett, as Garrett said before, it works on percentages. If that door hardware is 5%, he'll hold back 5%. He's not going to hold back the whole farm, which is good for the contractor.
There's sometimes you got to use a little bit of psychology with this too, because I might take a homeowner on the side and say, look, man, you need to take a deep breath here. Okay, it's not that bad, but we're not going to give them all the money because we're going to hold back that 10%.
Right.
And I won't give him that 10% until he puts those other 2 doorknobs in. and when you talk to people and you explain the real world to them and a lot of them are amenable to it, and so I don't have drama on my jobs. I just won't put up with it.
Right.
I like it.
I'll tell the people, fire this guy, get him out of here, or I'll tell them, pack it out.
We actually got a bunch of questions that popped in.
So let's try to rifle through some of them.
Yeah, let's run through some. So I got one here from Dominic, and it says, Dominic asks, so the 203K consultant is the buffer between the contractors and the consultant. In other words, the only person that the contractor interacts with is the consultant.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's not completely true, though, right? Because the contractor is still going to interact with the homeowner. I mean, he's not interacting with the lender per se, but it's
it's the consultant is like in between the contractor and the homeowner,
right?
And all 3 of us
right.
have to agree that what we do is the right thing because it takes 3 signatures to get the money out.
That's right. Perfect. That's the way to answer that question. Yeah, exactly. That's a good question, Dominic. Thank you very much for that one. So, we got another one here. It says, can the homeowner who is a licensed contractor be the contractor of the job too? Oh, I love this one.
Oh, Jeff, I'm sure you like this one.
So I'm going to give the lender perspective, and Garrett can answer this as well. HUD says you can, right? I mean, as long as they're licensed and insured. And as my company, we actually are one of the few that I'm aware of where we do allow for people to do it themselves.
Depends on the bank, definitely, though.
Yeah, 100%.
Mine didn't. My dad is a GC. He wasn't able to do it for my project.
Well, that's different. So that's different because that's an identity of interest.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're crossing over into a whole other avenue.
Right.
But go ahead, Garrett. I know you got a little feedback on the contractor work. So give us a little.
What people like that don't understand is that we have to use real numbers.
Yeah.
Just because you can do this for $25 doesn't mean I can put 25 in. I have to put $50 in because God forbid something happens to you, a car accident, heart attack, whatever. The lender has to have enough money in the escrow to get contractor B, C, or D in there to get the work completed. So if you can do it for less, that's great. Then we take the extra money that we had in there and we put it over as a principal reduction, or you can use that money to do additional things. And that, but I can't write a set of specs just because you can do it for this price.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's great. That's exactly the way we try to handle it is, you might get it and you might be able to put the money back against the principal. The important part where people get a little caught up on that is they got to remember, even if we do drop the principal amount, it does not change your payment. Your payment remains the same. So even if the principal does go down, the only time you'll actually be able to see that in your payment is if you go in your refi afterwards. So that might sure. All right, we got a couple more here. Let's see. So what questions should you ask when interviewing contractors outside of other than what the bid comes in at?
Excellent question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Any idea there, Garrett? Some questions that the homeowners or potential buyers could ask?
Well, you'd want to interview them to determine, do they get involved in bigger jobs, or you just don't want to take a guy that does nothing but roofing and let him play plumber. So you want to make sure that they're capable of doing major remodels if that's what you have. You're going to want to make sure that they are financially stable to the point that, if they have credit cards they can use, you can relatively assume that the guy pays his bills and everything else like that. So he's a pretty good risk for you. You want to discuss timelines. Do you have enough manpower to get my job done in a timely fashion? Or are you going to put 2 guys on my job one day and then have one guy for the rest of the week? So those are the different questions you're going to want to ask to make sure this is your guy.
Yeah, you got to. One thing I've always told people is you don't always just go with the most inexpensive guy or the most expensive guy, right? You got, especially if you're going to be living in this house, like during this renovation, if you end up hiring the guy that creeps you out, that he's in your house, I mean, that's probably not the right guy to go with. So you really gotta, just like you interview a lender or you interview a realtor before you go to work with them, you need to do the same type thing. Interview them, understand their experience level. Like as Garrett said, they're coming in to do $100,000 project. How many other $100,000 projects have they done? We want to make sure that you're getting the right person for the right job. So it's
definitely, how many more $100,000 jobs do you have going on now?
Correct. And can you float it? Right. Yeah. Exactly. Great question. It's a great call. You want to take the next one, Matt?
Sure. So we just finished interviewing questions. Yeah, excellent question. I talk a lot about this too on like a lot of my content, and you can check that as well on like how I interview contractors and stuff. But great question. What's the consultant cost? Does the buyer pay out of pocket? Big question we always get. I think if Garrett could shed some light on the fees and how the fee structure works and what you can wrap in, what you can't. Great question.
Yep.
Well, the fee, that's a sore point for me because the fee schedule was developed in 1994 and has not changed since.
Oh, geez.
And it's on a sliding scale. So if your budget is around $20,000, the consultants can't charge you any more than $500. If your budget is $75,000, they can charge you $800. So it's based on a sliding scale. And FHA regulates how much the consultant can charge. Everybody's going to charge you the same price.
Right.
Now, the service is provided up front. So FHA wants the consultants paid up front. So you pay the consultant at the time you meet. The consultant will then add that cost back into the cost of construction, and you can be reimbursed that money in one of two ways. You can either get it back as a credit off of your down payment, or you can get a check cut back to you at closing, either way. So in most cases, the people want to use it as part of their down payment. So if you're supposed to bring in $3,000 to the closing table and you paid the consultant $500, now all you got to bring in is $2,500. But fees to the consultant are paid up front. Now the draw fees later on are built into the mortgage already. So when the consultant goes out and does the draws, the funds come from the mortgage. So you're the only out of pocket you are is the upfront initial fee.
Yeah, and just to expand on that for people, as a lender, we don't have a choice. I mean, yes, we can finance it, and yes, we can make sure you get the money back and get the credit for it. But ultimately, if let's just say for whatever reason the deal doesn't go forward, then we can't be on the hook for an $800 or $1,000 charge because your deal didn't happen. So that's one of the reasons we have to have you come out of pocket, because Garrett did his job; he deserves to be paid. And if you're the consultant, we want to make sure that they are paid timely. So that's why you guys pay it up front. But we do, as Garrett said, we do allow it to be financed otherwise. So, and yes, I do agree, Garrett. You guys are up for a raise, by the way.
For sure. You guys do a lot.
1994, I was paying 89 cents for a gallon of milk. Today, I'm paying $3.89.
Listen. I've talked to this probably a million times with you guys, and I completely agree with you.
Well, you know what it is? It's part of the National Housing Act.
Mm-hmm.
The only way that can get changed is to go through Congress, and nobody at FHA has the impetus to want to go mess with Congress.
Yeah, never would be.
Let's go. Let's start a lobby.
Yeah,
lobbying is in, right? Let's do that. We can.
So let's get to our next one here. We got so this one we're going to go to you with, Garrett, and I have some input on this one too, and I'm sure Matt has some as well. Is it best to ask your consultant for recommendations on a GC and go from there? How do you handle that, Garrett?
I tell people that I don't take money from contractors, so there's no reason for me to want to recommend anybody. Okay, I try not to. I would much rather have you find somebody that you're most comfortable with. If you can't find anybody, I have a list of 35 contractors that I've met over the years that have done 203K jobs and have not given me any drama. That's how I handle it. And I give them that list and they can choose whichever guys they're most interested in. But I make it very plain that they understand that these guys are never going to sit down at my dining room table and have Thanksgiving dinner with me.
100%.
You know, these are just people that I've met over the years. Now, to get a contractor, I would tell them go to Home Advisors,
Mhm.
go to Angie's List. Those all have vetted contractors. They're all, you know, if somebody's checked them out, they're all licensed and insured people. So there really shouldn't be a reason why you can't find a contractor.
That's a good call. I mean, I've done thousands of renovation loans through the years. So we maintain a list of the contractors that have done projects with us. So if somebody asks for a recommendation, the first thing that I say is, I do not recommend anyone, ever.
Yep.
But what I will tell you is we have a list of guys who've done successful projects. And if there's somebody in your area that's done a successful project, I will snip it and I will give you the list of those people who have done successful projects. Ultimately, though, and I make sure it's on record, I'm giving you that list, but you have to interview and you have to agree who to work with. It is not a recommendation from us because I can't do that. I don't want to be liable for it. I mean, look, I've been through it. I'm sure most of you guys can talk about this. Contractor A, who's done 7, 8, 9, 10 projects and have been absolutely amazing, gets to his 11th project and completely craps the bed and, goes down the toilet. Next thing you know, he's out of business. So you really have to understand that every contractor is just like anybody else in this world. Things can go wrong. So you have to interview them yourself. And no matter who gives you the name, it's not a recommendation. It's on you as the buyer to interview that contractor.
Absolutely. So someone actually just chimed in, said, Lola, I wouldn't do it. I had a really bad experience from a consultant, recommended a GC. Now, listen, that's why the caveat to what Garrett and Jeff are both saying is they will give you a list of someone who has done it, but it's your onus to do your own due diligence and come up with who you feel comfortable with and who you've vetted and who you've looked at their references and everything like that. Again, I talk about this ad nauseum in a lot of my training and stuff like that, but basically what you want to do is, like Garrett said, there's no excuse these days with the internet, guys. There really isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell people, start with your personal network, friends, family, coworkers, ask them. That's always going to be your best thing. A personal recommendation always goes a long way, especially if that contractor gets a lot of recommendations from that one person. They're going to make sure that they continue to do good work. I mean, my dad's whole business was always word of mouth. And there was 1 or 2 guys over the course of his career that probably gave him like 80% of his work. And he made sure that every person that came through, he continued to service them correctly. Now, that being said, if you're in a pinch and you need a bunch of you should not only go to your consultant for contractors. You should not only go to your lender. By all means, maybe cherry pick 1 or 2 from their list and sprinkle it in, because you should be getting multiple bids for these projects to see where these contractors kind of shake out against others. It's good. And then you make your own judgment call. But yeah, obviously huge red flag if a consultant is telling you use this guy. Don't use that guy then, right? Because obviously there's some sort of conflict of interest there, or there's some sort of maybe under the table thing, which you don't want to avoid. A good consultant will always preface it by saying, I know I have some people. I am not pushing you to any recommendation. These are guys I've done successful. It's up to you to make the decision. And that's it. So very good question. But again, I think the real big thing here is get from a lot of different places. Angie's List, I recommend Angie's List. I recommend your personal network. And then if you're still having maybe issues, ask for your lender or ask for your consultant if they have a list of contractors that you now need to go do the due diligence with, research them and see which one you would like out of their lists.
Yep, no doubt. That's good question and great responses. Another question here, guys. How many times, this one's for you, Garrett, how many times does the consultant need to come to the job site? Do they get paid on the number of times they come to address an issue? What motivates them to put in as much time as required?
Bottom line is it's called customer service.
Yeah.
You take care of the customers. Well, let me go back up, preface this a little bit. The amount of draws is based on the dollar value of the job. So I have to determine how many times is this contractor going to need to get paid for a $30,000 job. Well, probably 3 times at best. Okay. So I'm going to put in 3 draws. The 3 draws for my fees are added to the backside of the mortgage. So when I go out and do the draws, the lender pays me. So the borrower is not cash out of pocket anymore. Then if I'm doing $100,000 job, I might require 5 draws. A lot of it depends on the contractor himself. Now I was a contractor for 50 years. So I may walk up and rub elbows with this guy and say, hey man, can you handle 30 grand at a crack? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. No problem. So then I know that I can space the draws out or do a little bit less. But most of the time I'm figuring between $20,000 and $30,000 per draw. So that determines how much I put in for draw payments.
I think one of the things that that question kind of brings to mind is, well, first of all, just typically we can do up to 5 draws for everybody wanting to know like how many we will do and how much you put in. The typical number maximum is 5. I mean, I've seen it go higher, obviously, if it's needed, because it sounds like this person who's asking this question is kind of asking also if there's issues. I mean, there are times when and I'm sure Garrett, you could probably expand upon this, but I'm sure there's been times where there's been disagreements or things have come up and it's maybe not a draw inspection. Would you consider that like a compliance inspection or a mediation? I mean, I know it's not full mediation, but you know what I mean? Like what would you consider that if somebody's having problems?
Well, the consultant is not a project manager. They do not have care, custody, or control over the job or the contractor or his processes.
Right.
However, if things get sideways, the homeowner will call me. I'll try to figure out what's going on. I'll make a few phone calls back and forth. And I typically don't have to go out. Or I'll tell them, look, I'll check that on the next draw when I go out. Then if it does get totally upside down, then I have a fee schedule that I charge for mediation that I do personally myself to try to get these people back on track.
Gotcha.
But it's an extra fee. But that extra fee typically can be paid through the mortgage out of the contingency reserve money. And Jeff, you should probably explain that.
Yeah, if the contingency is there for cost overruns and for unforeseen items, something like this would be considered an unforeseen item. You have something where the contractor thing has gone sideways, and we need to take care of that. That's what we can sometimes use the contingency for. The contingency can be anywhere from 10 to 20%, depending upon what Garrett has decided, and then the underwriter validates what they agree with when it comes to that. But that funds are there for that reason, and if they're not used, they get back. Just like earlier we were talking about, they get put back against the principal. Most people use them though, let's be honest, because they do something else, they come up with something, and they keep building. So, but I think the important thing, it's important to keep in mind, because I know it does come up, and we don't want to harp on the bad things that happen with these projects, but I do want to be realistic. And if you are in a situation where you've got a contractor situation and things aren't going right, and Garrett is able to help, that's great. But this is why it's so important to be interviewing your contractor up front. The less type of BS that you get stuck in towards the middle or the end of a project trying to figure it out, it's going to cost you time, it's going to cost you money, and it's going to cost you headaches. And it's the last thing you want to be dealing with. You want to get into your house, you want to move on. If you're following what Matt's teaching and what we're talking about as far as equity creation and building wealth, that's what these projects are for. We got to get that done, get you into the property and get it over with. We don't want to be sitting here haggling over issues with contractors. So do a good job up front, and then you don't have problems down the line. That's really the biggest and most important thing. Would you guys agree to that?
To chime in on that, I told people the hardest part of this entire process was the front end. Once the construction was going, it was fine. Like, yeah, things come up, but the construction's the freaking easy part. If you do everything right in the beginning. Now, again, my lenders and everything didn't do everything right, but we knew what we needed to do on the construction end. We just needed to get like on the same page on like what we needed paperwork wise, permit wise. Like my contractor had no idea what a draw schedule was or anything like that. But once we kind of ironed out all that stuff, I knew I had good contractors on my team. I knew the lender was a good, they were trying to do the right thing for me. They just didn't know. And I tell people all the time, that's why I harp so much on having that big three. I call it, basically like the trifecta. You want a good renovation consultant, HUD consultant, you want a good lender, experienced lender, and you want a great contractor. If you have those three things in place, once your process starts, I almost guarantee, I can't make any guarantees, but I promise you it'll be much easier than if you rushed the beginning process. Kind of like that story I told you, that lady before, she just grabbed whoever was out there, and now she's fighting to get her job done because she just grabbed the lowest hanging fruit, which unfortunately wasn't the right guy for the job. But excellent question. And I guess one more quick question I have for you, Garrett, and another thing that comes up a lot with what people ask me is, so to your effect, so some people do have that common misconception sometimes that they think that the HUD consultant is like the project manager, which they're not. And I try to tell people that, but depending on your consultant, they'll get their hands dirty. Like guys like you, they'll get in there if they need to. What are some things in terms of schedule and in terms of keeping the contractor in? And I know my own things, but I want to hear from you, like, I'm sure you've run into issues with the borrower where they can't find their contractor, guy's not showing up, or he's been slow at pacing and stuff. What could you suggest for someone to make sure that doesn't happen, maybe from the front end, or any suggestions there?
Well, as you guys know, I actually helped rewrite this program in the early 90s. Okay. When we did that, I didn't have faith. So what I did is I did a 203K myself because I didn't want to put my name and my reputation on something that didn't work. Okay, so I've worn every hat here. And I've also been a contractor, for all these years and that. So I'm able to meld these people together on a platform that everybody can agree with. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I get in there. I do what I can to help these people and that understand. There's times when they just want to throw bricks at each other and there's nothing you can do to help them. But there is a process in place of arbitration. So they can't sue you and take you to a courtroom, either the homeowner or the contractor. They have to go into arbitration, and it's binding arbitration. So it's what the arbitrator comes up with. And the arbitrator is a fair guy. He's going to sit there and weigh everybody's arguments and points and that, and then he'll make the determination, or she will make the determination as to what's right and what's wrong. Okay. So there is a process in place to handle major disputes.
Right. That's great.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why too, and we kind of get stuck in the middle a lot too as the lender, but it's important for people to understand when you're getting into these projects, what you're actually signing is called the HOCA. It's a homeowner contractor agreement. And I always have to tell everybody, it's not a homeowner lender contractor agreement. It's a homeowner contractor agreement. All we do, like Garrett, where he's, there to inspect, we just facilitate the money. So it's not our job to fix your problem. If you got a problem between the two of you guys got to figure it out because it's a homeowner contractor, right? That's the important piece of the puzzle that everybody kind of misses. And right. I think it's important for people to know. But listen, I know we could probably go on for another hour if we really wanted to, but it's we've already pushed the hour mark at this point, and I think this was absolutely awesome. We got some people that said, great information. Garrett, I think I probably speak for Matt, and he'll probably say it in a second, but I'd love to have you back, and maybe we can pull up like an actual like an SOR one day and actually pull it on the screen and kind of maybe show people what it looks like and give them some samples and kind of run through some scenarios. I think that would be helpful for people to really understand what it actually looks like, what it actually feels like, when we're actually showing something that you're doing. So,
well, one thing I'd like to point out too is the quality of the consultant that you get. In today's world, HUD is approving a lot of guys that really aren't qualified. And I'm sorry to say that, but it is the truth.
It's in every industry, man. Look at realtors. No offense to realtors, but
if you go to the HUD list and you're looking at a consultant, check his registration number. The higher the number, the less experience the guy's got. So unfortunately, the lenders, when they have to go to that list, it's like throwing a dart at a dartboard. They have no idea what they're getting. But if you're looking for a guy that's got, years experience, go with the guys with the lower numbers. That'd be a big help to you.
And that's what I tell borrowers all the time. I say, remember, I say it's kind of like what a cop says to you. Like, if you don't have a lawyer, we'll provide you one. That's kind of what Jeff's doing. If they don't already have a consultant, they'll give you one. And I'm sure they'll give you a good one, like someone like Jeff who knows it. But the bar, as you said earlier, guys, remember, the consultant works for you. So it's important for you to find a consultant that works for you and someone that you trust and you like.
But Karen, I want to make a point.
The consultant says to send me the contractor's bid, hang up on them.
Yeah, exactly. But listen, I want to make a real important point, because this was something that came up when I was telling somebody the other day. You're right. The homeowner does hire the consultant. Okay. But at the end of the day, though, the way the HUD writes it is the lender is supposed to select the consultant, and you want the lender to select the consultant because we monitor the consultants that we work with. So if I get a customer that comes in with a consultant who's already on the project, and I know that consultant's got a bad reputation and is just somebody that may have done something underhanded, and I know it, I may not be able to approve that consultant to do the project for us. So I would highly recommend that, number one, you start with the experienced lender, who then helps you to find the right consultants.
Right.
Garrett, you can go to Garrett, obviously, and talk to people up front. But make sure that the lender that you select is going to be okay with that consultant, because there are times I've had this happen where we have not been able to use a consultant because that consultant has had dings, we'll call them. And those dings were things we weren't comfortable with that person being on the project. So
good point. And that's why you want to create that ecosystem, right? Like, when I come to you with a 203K consultant and I find out, well, maybe, I did have all the warm and fuzzies with the guy, but then I go to you, you're like, Matt, can't use him. We had a bad thing. Yeah. Okay, great. That's a nice checks and balances there. All right, I'll go on to the next one. But again, it's kind of just knowing, like, it all comes down to experience at the end of the day. And that's what we fight with. And that's why we do this renovation roundtable. That's why we do these Q&As in this podcast, is to try to, again, take the veil away from this loan program that kind of gets sometimes a bad rap because people get into it and lenders do them without having any idea what they are really, when there's guys out there, professionals, that do these day in, day out. This is what they do, right? You want to find that in anything you do, right? I always look for the best guys in any industry and whatever it is that I'm looking for, right? I always want the best. That's just how I am. So nothing different here. And this is awesome. And I'm seeing all the comments from people, and it's just such a good thing to have. And I'm glad we have like minds from every different walk of life in these transactions, so people can really get a good look at how this thing is supposed to work and how good it will work if you have the right people in place. But awesome points for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we should wrap it up. I think the intent is to come back in another 2 weeks. Yeah. So guys, start prepping your questions. We'd love to have you guys come again and pepper us with questions. That's what this is all about. Garrett, thanks, man. Really appreciate you taking the time to spend an hour of your time with us. You know what I do for a living? I help people realize their American dream.
Yes, you do.
There you go.
What a great job.
It really is. Yeah, man. And then it's you really do. And it's again a pleasure to have you always. I mean, you brought so much. All my followers, I think, love you. They all we have a group. We have the 203K group. And when as soon as Garrett came in and introduced himself, you got like a flood of comments and likes, and everyone's been super appreciative, and it's glad to have you. And we'll definitely do this again for sure.
100%. All right, guys. Glad to help.
Everybody, welcome. Appreciate everybody coming on business again, and we'll see you in about 2 weeks. We'll send out an invite, let everybody know what's coming. Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
See you, Matt. See you, Garrett.
Bye, guys.